Hi guys, I'm back with another video for you today. I've got a special guest here with me, Joseph, a classic vintage fragrance lover. So today we're going to talk about, Today we're going to talk about some existing or currently selling classic men's fragrances and also some discontinued vintage men's fragrances. So I know you guys are out there, you love these classic men's fragrances. So if you want to find out about them, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. And yes, today we're talking about some classic fragrances. And I've got Joseph here with me, who I've met on Facebook, I think years and years and years ago. And then you were commenting on some of my videos. And then I discovered you on Instagram. And then I think I saw a lot of your reviews because I'm kind of going in waves with my vintage fragrances obsession. I get in and out of them, and then I was looking up a lot of vintage fragrances, and I look them up on Fragrantica, and I'd see you, and I'm like, okay. And then so you really love the fragrances that were from the yesteryear. Tell me why.
Yeah, for some reason, just the classic heyday fragrance. I mean, it stretches really far back for me as far as what I enjoy. I enjoy some of the earliest from Caron and Guerlain from the early to mid 20th century. But really what I developed a sweet spot for are the scents that came out between, the late 50s to maybe the mid 90s. So we're talking 30 or more years ago. And there's something about the composition, the types of materials that were chosen, the types of approaches by the perfumers as well. And I think that there's a certain level of nostalgia and how that is connected to, the hippocampus. When you smell certain smells, you recall memories. And I think there's a lot of fond memories of these classic scents as well, and sort of revisiting those. But yeah, it is my specialty. It is not what I'm limited to. I definitely have opened my mind to more contemporary scents as well. But I definitely think I've concentrated a great deal on this whole time period of 20th century fragrance. You could say that.
So you're not as old as I am. So what about enjoying these fragrances? Like, when did you start enjoying these classic fragrances? Because I grew up with them around my family. My mom's brother loved them, and then of course my dad. So they had them around the early 80s, late 70s, up until the mid 80s when I started wearing them. So around that time, since you are younger, you were even much younger than I am. So how did you start getting into these? Is it a later thing, or did you enjoy them when you were young?
I think I enjoyed them when I was really young. Both my mom and my dad were fragrance wearers. My mom did wear actually a lot of Avon. But in addition to that, she had a few other fragrances that were classics at the time. I'm trying to think of a few of them that she loved to wear. She did like to wear Charlie. She enjoyed a few other similar scents to that. And my father, he wore he had Paco Rabanne pour homme. He had Azzaro pour homme. He had Canoe. What is it called? British Sterling. He had a lot of these like very, barbershop sort of splash on kind of scents. So yeah, I think from an early age, I just was drawn to scent, and I didn't really develop this obsession or passion until probably later on. I think I was more sort of like, it was more like in a periphery several years ago. Like I had sort of a handful of scents that I enjoyed. But I really just started getting into it when I was studying perfume making. I started to branch out and just learn about the history of fragrance and sampling all the many different things that are out there. So it's been a long journey in discovering scent. I think my first scent, I was 11 years old and I had a bottle of Aspen.
Oh, I wore that too.
Aspen, yeah. I had Aspen. I had, this was the
When did you wear Aspen? Excuse me.
11, 12. It was like my first one.
But I wore it 88, 89 up until 90 or somewhere around there, 88, 89, 90. So
Yeah.
was it around that same time?
Yeah, because I was 11 or 12 in 89. Yeah, yeah. That was one of the ones I had. I would sometimes sneak my older brother's bottle of Polo Green because that was like the scent at the time. And I still love it to this day. And I've had
Now let me ask you
others.
about Polo. Do you like the current version of Polo or the vintage version of Polo? Because I don't like the current version.
The current version really bottoms out into something that's really messy and not true to the original composition. I think that there was really this desperate attempt to retain the integrity of the composition, but it just fell really short of expectations. Like it starts off very similar to the original, and then there's this steep decline into
That's exactly what I think.
Unappetizing kind
that
of.
leather it develops into is not good.
It's not the kind of dry down, not the kind of base that I remember. I have all the bottles. I did try it in the department store, and I'm like, and like I just had it on me for a while, and I was like, what is going on here? This is not.
What do they do to this masterpiece?
And it's not limited to Polo Green either. There are a few others where it's a little disappointing how as a result of reformulation and restrictions, the dry down, I find more than anything else, ends up being quite unlike what it used to be. For the most part, I think that they can construct the top notes to be as similar to the original composition, but something about the fixatives, I guess maybe the musks or the fixatives or the percentage of musks and fixatives that were used at the time had to be tweaked and reduced and replaced, and now they don't really quite smell the same. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me what the biggest differences are between fragrances now within the last 10 years with fragrances, as you mentioned, like the mid 90s and before up until the 50s. What's the biggest difference to you?
I think a lot of people would agree with me when they would say that the quantity of Oakmoss or equivalents thereof has reduced greatly. I think that the emphasis on Oakmoss as a fixative and to impart a quality in many different fragrances is nowhere near as present today as it were 20, 30 or more years ago. And besides the obvious reason that there have been restrictions to the usage of Avernia prunastri, which is the Latin name for oak moss, for dubious reasons.
That sounds like somebody else I know that uses that word.
Is it Dana?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she and I are both nerds in that respect.
Nerds.
I find that with the reconstructions of the oak moss accord, if you will, when they're attempting to use what little Avernia prunastri as possible with tree moss, which is similar but not quite the same profile, and then they try to flesh it out with some vetiver, some patchouli, Evernil, which is a synthetic, Orsinil, which is another synthetic. I think that depending upon the perfumer, the budget, they can approximate that feel. But I don't think that it's really difficult to match the natural quality that is imparted by oak moss and its fixative quality. Something about that natural material, and I'm not like this, naturals are inherently better by any means, but something magical about oak moss. And I think also just the types of fragrances have changed, where they have veered in the direction away from the aromatic, the herbal, the green. You don't see as much of this interesting contrast. I think that more recent scents, while they can be very well done, there is this tendency for as much accessibility to current consumer tastes, which I think bear towards the sweet and
yeah, exactly.
And even when people say, "Oh, there's this wonderful amber, you've got to try it," and I'm like, "This is like amber dessert. This is not the amber that I know of. I like the ambers that have like that sort of like a little bit of an animalic edge to it because there's like a lot of labdanum in it, and there's just I think that there is just this tendency to want there to be the sweet, edible, accessible, approachable quality to pretty much any kind of fragrance right now. And maybe I'm being overly opinionated, but that's what I noticed with a lot of the mainstream releases of the past 10 years or so.
So I take it you don't like gourmands.
It's not that I don't like gourmands. I can appreciate gourmands, especially when the perfumer creates some interest in the fragrance. And when I say that, it means they're not just serving you the scented equivalent of an edible dessert, that you're not going to literally smell exactly like a chocolate cake. There has to be some sort of contrast or something to kind of pull it in another direction to make it more perfume. That's why I absolutely love like patchoulis that do have sort of a cacao element. But the
Me
patchouli
too.
kind of reminds you like it's not quite edible. It's not quite meant to be eaten. It's meant to be worn, and it's meant to be a fragrance. But if something is literal, like it just literally it smells like a dessert, you can almost taste it. Not really my thing. I like to have some sort of curveball to kind of take it a little bit away from that direction. So if a gourmand can do that, I'll like it. But if it's literal, I'm not as big of a fan.
Okay. Why does today's generation find fragrances of yesterday very dated smelling? The reason I'm asking this question is because they react really, really negatively to those kind of fragrances, especially when I talk about it on my YouTube channel or on Instagram. There's always somebody that reacts really, really negatively to it, almost like, how dare you talk about that fragrance kind of a thing. Why do you think that is?
I think certain people have reached a level in their awareness of scent, of what makes them feel a certain feeling that they're looking for, and they haven't really opened up to a challenge of something that they're not familiar with. Like they haven't dabbled with something outside of their comfort zone. And I think with younger people, especially younger people who probably were not even as old as we are, so they didn't even grow up with the scents that surrounded us at the time, may at first perceive these scents to be foreign, or if they have smelled them, they associate it with an age group different from their own, and they want to sort of distance themselves from them. Like, I'm youthful, I'm not associated with that because that's associated with old people. And I don't think that's intentional. I think it's just, it's like anything. It's like taste in clothing and music, and it all depends on whether that individual wants to stay rank and file and mainstream and accessible and crowd pleaser, and everybody's going to say, oh, wow, that's like a really now kind of scent. Or if they're willing to say, you know, I really like fragrance on another level, and I want to know more than what's just immediate, what's today. But yeah, I think it takes like a certain kind of open mind and a willingness to kind of try to, you know, just sort of like dip your toes in the water a little bit, like, green. I'm not used to associating fragrances that I wear with green, but maybe I'll try this. There's a little green note in it, and then gradually branch out.
Yeah, I mean, it takes some practice, but I was going to lead up to another question. Have we gotten lazy? Do you think as a society and smells? I mean, a lot of the fragrances that are launched now seem to be, you said, crowd pleasers or things that we associate with in our day-to-day lives. But in the old days, men's fragrances were over the top masculine. Women's fragrances were over the top feminine. So although I think there were some women's fragrances that kind of went masculine, but with men's, it was really, really masculine. A whole other
conversation on that.
Yeah. But nowadays, yeah, I mean.
Oh, sorry. No, this is just a very good question. I think that.
Wait, before you answer that, I was going to say now men's fragrances seem really unisex.
Yes.
So what has happened to men's fragrances being unisex? And then when I get on and say I like this feminine fragrance, people say, why do you wear women's fragrances to me? It's like, well, you're wearing a fragrance that's used to be a woman's fragrance 20, 30 years ago. Now you're wearing it as a men's fragrance. Why shouldn't I wear that fragrance?
Well, therein lies the paradox, because we have two different things that we're looking at here. We're looking at fragrance that is marketed to a certain gender versus the way that it smells in isolation. So if we were not to know what gender that particular scent is marketed to, are we able to immediately discern that it was meant for a woman or meant for a man? So when we're wearing some of these older fragrances that were marketed to women, that to the nose today is like, wow, this is very masculine and unisex. I think that for many men out there who may be uncomfortable even associating themselves or being adjacent to a feminine fragrance, if they were to smell it blindly, I'm pretty certain a lot of them, and I'm thinking of things like, Mitsuko or Aromatics Elixir.
I was going to say Aromatics Elixir.
Right. So I don't think they would say
they have a male equivalent of it.
Yeah, exactly. What a great segue. Because I have mine right here, which is, yes, sort of the male equivalent of Aromatics Elixir. But what's sort of funny is it's like both to me are unisex. And so what's interesting about Aromatics Elixir and ARAMIS 900 is that they're two variations on the same theme. So you have one of the compositions pulling in sort of one direction and then the other pulling in a different direction. So whether or not one was marketed to a female or marketed to the other one marketed to a male, it's kind of hard to even tell. Like to me, the only difference between ARAMIS 900 and say Aromatics Elixir is that maybe this pulls a little bit more in a green and civet direction, whereas like Aromatics Elixir is a little bit more patchouli and chamomile. But the sort of the core is very similar. I mean, it's Bernard Chant. Bernard Chant, he did all these variations on the same theme.
I mean, ARAMIS, he did them, but with this too. I mean, there's Cinnabar for women.
Yeah.
And then there's JHL for ARAMIS.
JHL, which was a variation on an amber. This was a variation on an amber. I know that we're moving away from the word Oriental, but think Cinnabar. This is sort of like Cinnabar for men. Yeah, totally. And this one I love. Absolutely love that one.
When did you get yours? I got mine last year, just as the pandemic started. It seems not the best formulation. I just sprayed it on before we got on the Zoom, so I'm revisiting it.
I'll spray mine right now. And what's interesting is that I've been happy with this bottle, and I have a backup bottle. I don't have an older bottle though, because they seem to be very expensive and very, very scarce. But the ones that I have, I'm pretty pleased with. But bear in mind, I think that even when they released this gentleman's collection, they had different, and I'll preface by saying I'm not obsessed with batches, but they had different batches throughout those years. So there could be some variation or change from say 2009 or 2010 when they reissued them, and then when they continued producing them for the years following. But I'm happy with it. Of course, I would like it to be as bombastic as Cinnabar, older formulation Cinnabar at least, because I have a bottle of that. But I'm quite pleased with it. Yeah, and this one is it's on me all day. Like
really?
Maybe I'm just blessed with a certain skin chemistry, but I still smell it. Like if I put ARAMIS 900 on at 8:30 in the morning, I still smell it on my skin at 5:30, and we're talking this version, whatever this
cologne
is that I have. Yeah.
It's eau de cologne. But you know what? I always say it's the patchouli. It has one of the best notes ever. It has the longest lingering power of any kind of a note. To me, it does.
Yeah.
It stays on forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. And it's funny, like even as I'm wearing JHL right now, I'm being reminded of ARAMIS 900 because like I said, Bernard Chant, he sort of had this template. So I'm picking up sort of the qualities that are shared in both ARAMIS 900 and in this one right now. Like if I sprayed this one on this side, I love the top note in ARAMIS 900.
It's a great fragrance. I absolutely love it. And it reminds me of Aromatics Elixir because when I was young, somebody in my family a woman wore Aromatics Elixir. That's kind of why I love that fragrance. And when I was younger, I thought, you know what? I don't want to wear a woman's fragrance. This was great.
Is this an excuse to wear Aromatics Elixir? But now I wear Aromatics Elixir as well. And this is actually one that I remember from my childhood too, both this and Aromatics Elixir. My aunt wore Aromatics Elixir, and I had an uncle, not married, but a different uncle who wore Aramis 900. So a lot of memories of both.
My dad wore all of the earlier Aramis fragrances, the original Aramis, Devon, Tuscany Peruomo, Aramis 900. What else is there? Something else, a JHL. And then I wore those fragrances through him. And then I wore New West and I wore Havana. He didn't wear those fragrances, unfortunately, but I love the Aramis collection of fragrances. They're amazing.
Oh, they're wonderful. All of them.
Yeah.
And I think that they did a pretty good job at preserving the integrity of those compositions when they did that reissue. But like I said, batch variations, you don't know what happened from year to year with the materials, so it can vary. But overall, I think they did an excellent job, which can't really be said for some that are still in existence or were reissued. So great job, Aramis.
One question I was going to ask, so why do some reformulations of fragrances smell so bad compared to something like, the reformulation of this is quite amazing.
And I have the same one too. I have it with the black cap. Now, I read online that, oh, the black cap, go for the black cap, because for some reason, when they did this reformulation versus the silver cap that came before it, a couple of formulations, they kind of went back to the original vibe of Givenchy, gentlemen. This is very well done. I got to spray this one too.
It is a great fragrance. So good. But you know what it reminds me of? It does remind me a little bit of this. Does it remind you of this?
It's because of the way that they use the patchouli, so that the patchouli is both there and not there. And that sounds at first as if it doesn't make sense, like there and not there. I think it's an excellent use of patchouli without the patchouli standing out like a sore thumb. It really just sort of like with this, you know, you have the honey and the rose and the jasmine and the leather and everything, and it all sort of becomes this whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So it really just seems like this conflagration of amazing smells all at once, just bursting. And it dries down very lovely too. Like I kind of call it like, you know, the evaporation curve. So when it starts to settle on the skin, it's so like smooth. It doesn't just like, sometimes when I smell some scents that are reformulated, like we were mentioning earlier, it's like, oh, this is just as I remembered it. And then where did it go? What happened? But this, very well done as well. I agree. That particular.
Well, I'm just going to lead into a couple of questions. So, Gentleman Givenchy by Gentleman by Givenchy does remind me of ZINO Davidoff. They're different, but it has hints. But it also reminds me of this one, Balenciaga Pour Homme.
Yes. So this is interesting.
So why did Balenciaga Pour Homme get discontinued, but we still have Gentleman Givenchy and we have ZINO Davidoff?
Good question. So I'm kind of wondering if Balenciaga at the time I had a few theories about this one. It just wasn't a great seller because at that time, something so rich and patchouli heavy and dense was not nearly as in vogue as it was even a few years prior. So it was almost a little out of step with the time, and it just wasn't as successful. But because this became sort of more iconic because it came before it, it had probably a much
2 years before
following. So I have this one. This is an older formulation. As you can see, the script is in both the ZINO and Davidoff. And then I have this newer. And truth be told, save for a little bit of substantivity in the base here, where it does sort of linger a little bit more, and there's probably a little bit more oak moss. They're not too different. So if people out there are obsessing about getting an older formulation, don't fret. This is, you know, this is nothing to shake a stick at either. I think it's really well done.
I think the reformulation on this is amazing, and you can get this for $20.
Yeah, yeah. While you can, hopefully.
I better buy a couple of backup bottles.
And you know something interesting. So with ZINO, this is the magic of ZINO. So the perfumer is Michel Almairac.
Yeah.
And Michel Almairac created an accord in this, which is the ZINO accord, which you would revisit later in none other than Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit and ZINO are distantly related, and if you smell the two of them,
really,
you will notice there is
created both, right?
Yeah, even though one is based on you know, leather and green violet, there is this same usage of this accord, and this accord that he uses. I'm trying to think of what it is. It's methylanthanolate, which is used in jasmine, sort of smells like Concord grape. There is this gamma undulactone, which is C14, a peach aldehyde, and patchouli. So when you combine that, it creates, if you combine that, if you were in like a perfumer's workshop at an organ and you put, I don't know, one part of each of those, mix it up, it would smell very much like the core of ZINO. And then he did sort of like a variation on that by replacing, I think, like the methylanthanolate with something else to really make the core of Fahrenheit. I don't know. I'm nerding out, but the perfume making process and how these fragrances were created, it's just fascinating onto its own. But so I have this too, so we can talk about this as well.
How do you find this information out? Who tells you these like scientific names for ingredients in perfumes?
Studying perfume making, self-taught, reading a lot, studying a lot.
Like, is it public knowledge?
Some of it's public knowledge. I did actually learn that from another colleague who studied perfume, that he read that somewhere. And then I looked it up and I'm like, well, there you go. I guess it's true. And then I actually mixed it and I'm like, wow, holy smokes, this really does kind of smell like ZINO. Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting.
So going back to this, you said probably because it wasn't successful because of the type of fragrance it is, but you know what? It came out in 90, right? There was Heritage from Guerlain that came out that year, which I kind of find has similarities with the patchouli. And then Pacha de Cartier, also patchouli. Those are still around. This one is gone bye-bye.
Maybe Cartier and Guerlain had bigger budgets and they were able to promote the fragrance more. So because it was a very competitive market, because they had that muscle to both of them, and they did at the time, those ones persisted and this one faltered. But this one is no less beautiful. I think the other two just were able to persist and really gain a following, while this one didn't really catch on with the consumers, which is strange how that happens, you know?
Weird.
I think it's just a matter of being at the right place at the right time, right money. For whoever's releasing it. I know there's something really interesting about Balenciaga, like it got bought out by Puig or something, or there's something, I don't know if it was Puig or if it was Bogart. There's some similarities actually. And the reason why I mentioned Bogart is that there's some similarities to this, to a couple of Bogart fragrances. Like, if you smell Bogart Witness is almost like the younger sibling of this one. And that
interesting. I've never smelled Witness.
Later. Yeah, look into Bogart Witness and you'll see that. It's a lot more cinnamon and a lot more sort of festive smelling and very early 90s. But it is very similar to this. I don't have really the notes on that, but I could swear to God, there was something having to do with Balenciaga, the perfume division being bought out by Bogart, and then that was the reason why they stopped making a few Balenciaga fragrances and they started making different ones. It's a long story, but yeah, it's interesting. The whole history of it and how it's all intertwined is really cool. And as far as the perfumer for this one is Gerard Anthony. And Gerard Anthony actually also did Azaro Porom. He did, I don't know if you know this one, Ylang-Ylang Iquitos. Really,
I have a bottle.
Yeah, really rare, highly coveted. I actually don't have
I
it.
love that fragrance. I just bought it like 4 months ago. It's fantastic.
I'm convinced that it was this wunderkind of a perfumer because he made that, which I only sampled, which is spectacular. He made this, which is obviously out of this world, and he did
Iquitos is amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's freaking amazing. As good as this stuff right here, Joint.
Oh yeah, that you know what? That is a good transition. Because I think the three of these are somewhat related. I will hold up both of them because they're both this.
You've got a big bottle.
Deep garnet color. Yeah, I have a little baby bottle
of Joint.
Yeah, I have a big bottle, but I have a little bottle of Furio. Because at the time I got the bottle of Furio, they weren't everywhere. They were really hard to find, so I was perfectly happy with a 30 milliliter, and I feel like that will last me. Yeah, it's just the other way around. Beautiful color though. And they're very similar. It's the same sort of family of like, I don't know, very hard to describe, but they're both very animalic. They're both musky, civety, honey, castoreum. They're very heavy. And I love that. And I love that they just take no prisoners. It's just like, here I am, and this is my big badass fragrance.
Okay.
If I reported to an office, I would wear it just to see what reactions I get. I'd wear either one of them.
So let me ask you something, because these fragrances, I'm very challenged with animalics, but I'm not challenged with animalics of yesteryear. These days, animalics do not smell that good.
They often don't, right?
They almost make me gag, but this stuff is just fantastic. And I don't care how much animalics there are, it really smells great. Is it because I like natural animalics and I hate synthetic animalics?
Well, I even think that there were some synthetic animalics at the time, but they just the compounds and the accords that they used were different. You know, there are a couple that were really common back in the day. Not to digress, but there's one called Tonquitone, which is a base that combines many different fragrance materials. Tonquitone was very popular in a lot of musky fragrances back in the day. And Animalis, which is another base that was common in a lot of the musky fragrances back then. Now, if you smell Kiehl's original musk, it's one of the few more recent musks that I would say are vaguely familiar to the musks from the past because they actually use Tonquitone and Animalis in it. But you're absolutely right. These more recent musks, there seems to be this attempt to be bold and strident and really like animalic in a way that's kind of scary sometimes. And like you really literally smell like, you know, somebody wiped their butt on you or you're in an animal's butt. I know. So like offensive smelling. Like, yeah. Not and I kind of scratch my head like, this is interesting as a conversational piece, but I don't think that I would be able to wear this in public for fear that people think I'm not really taking good care of myself, as it were. But these older musks are a lot more nuanced. They're like animalic, but still, you know, it's not going there all the way, but almost. Does that make sense? It's like almost there, but it's not crossing that line. Those are awesome, though. You got me having to spray Furio now, so I can just talk about it.
I'm going to spray Joint. Joint is fantastic.
With all these strong scents from yesteryear, I really smell quite controversial at this point. And it's like incensey, too. I swear, like you smell it, and there's like this incensey element to it. And even though the notes breakdown doesn't mention it, sometimes I'm just like, the notes, yeah, that's just a guide. I'm not going to take that literally. I think that there's something, and then there's the soapiness too. It's like, you're dirty.
The pininess.
The pininess as well. Like, it's like that kind of, that turpentine piney kind of like little prickly in your nose kind of thing.
I like that. Turpentine piney.
Turpentine piney, yeah. Like it's almost like too much, but it isn't. Yeah,
Oh
brilliant,
God, it's
brilliant
good.
fragrances. Absolutely.
But in all honesty, I think this Givenchy, Gentle Givenchy smells fantastic now too. I mean, we already
Oh,
mentioned it, but
absolutely.
it's
No doubt.
reminding me, the ROCCOBAROCCO joint is reminding me of this Givenchy gentleman.
Yep, yep,
But there's
because
a,
you have a lot of that, the patchouli and honey are in both. You have
they're
that harmony
both,
between the two. So yeah, definitely.
that's a good combo. I like that combo.
Oh, speaking of,
Oh,
Animalic's done right. Yatagan, all right. So Yatagan, I think that Yatagan is a classic. Love it or hate it, you know, as polarizing as it is, as confusing it might be to certain noses, you can't deny how compelling it is, how it arrests you and you're like, wow. Like, I'm gonna spray this one on a paper because I've sprayed too much on myself, but I have to spray it as we discuss it because this is brilliant too. Like,
oh wow. Oh,
and
this is a
is
brand new bottle
definitely,
I just opened up and it still smells great.
yeah, I got a backup bottle because you never know with Caron. I don't know if they're going to end up discontinuing it.
They just recently discontinued something.
I think Le Troisième Coron.
Yeah, that
Yeah, Le
one, yeah.
Troisième, which, oh, that's a crime. Absolute crime.
I don't have a bottle of that one.
You don't. Oh.
I
Try to
should get
find
it.
one before the prices skyrocket.
Okay.
Yeah, this is piney. This has that galbanum. The
Bitter.
Artemisia. I love the bitter. I love the bitterness. I love it. It's like having like a bitter aperitif, you know? It's nice.
I love bitter aperitivos.
Oh God, I love those. Like a Campari. Like I almost smell like if I think Campari and smell Yatagan, it's like, it's like a dirty Campari. Yeah. And then you have the castoreum. It's sort of like you're in the woods and you're among the trees and the herbs and the wild plants and everything. And you're just kind of also like it complements your own skin chemistry. But yeah, that one is.
I used to say about this one, you're in the woods, you mentioned everything, and then you stumbled onto a place where some animal had urinated or something.
And that's okay because it's nature. Embrace it. It's okay. It's just a distant waft of urine. Doesn't mean you're in a puddle of it. It's just like a little shade of it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of it here, there.
Just a little pinch of it. And then there's this too, which is also criminally discontinued.
Yeah, this is amazing. Amazing.
Van Cleven Arpels discontinuing this in SAR. I chose this one because I like SAR, but this is the one that really stole my heart. And I honestly have to say that I took it upon myself to get a bottle of this thanks to you and one of your videos. So I'm giving you credit for getting
for that.
Yes,
I bought that to feature in a video with Dahlia like 4 years ago. Then I went back to buy another because I bought it for like $19, $20, $21.
Yeah,
it had already been removed, and then I found out it was discontinued, and now I see it for like $300.
More than 10 times the amount. Isn't that wild? This is another one that I have a backup bottle of as well.
I don't have a backup bottle. I only have one.
You just have to relish it. Just don't.
But I've got so much.
No, I know. The next time you get around to it, you'll have plenty. But this one's beautiful too. So deep and dark and mysterious.
It's a dark rose. It's a beautiful dark rose with that pine tree in there. Do we have patchouli in here as well?
So for this one, I think that there is a dash of patchouli. If I'm not mistaken, it has. But you know what it more so has? It's more leathery in the base, and it's kind of that carnation thing. You know what? What's interesting is a lot of the notes that tie these together are things like carnation. I love a carnation note, and I love artemisia. I love when artemisia is present because it has like, it kind of contributes.
Isn't artemisia kind of like a licorice, or has a licorice?
In a way, it's a little bit anisic, but then it has its own sort of quality to it that smells almost like when you crush like juniper leaves, juniper needles, or pine needles a little bit, but it's a little bit more herbal than that. There's actually a chemical compound called thujone, and thujone is in abundance in an evergreen tree called thuja. And thujone is also in wormwood and artemisia, and it just has that very like, it's kind of like like it's bracing. It's like, ooh, it has that sort of punch to it.
Yeah.
And it's in a lot of these. You know, it's in the Yatagan, it's in Van Cleef and Arpels Porum, it's in a number of them. But then when you have that, and you have the Carnation, and you have things like caraway and these kind of like a little bit animalic kind of things like caraway and cumin and everything.
Oh, I love cumin.
Oh God.
Most people don't like it. Why do you want to smell like body odor?
I don't know. It's one of the great mysteries, but this is the oldest one. Hi. This is the oldest one on the list. If we're talking about, you know, chronologically speaking, this is from the 50s.
Is that what you have in your hand there?
Huh?
Is that what you have on your hand there?
It is. This is.
Why is your bottle? Oh.
Look at that. Yeah, I'm sorry the light isn't as great as it could be.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
This is a repackaged version then.
Yeah. It's this is an older iteration of it. I have 2 bottles of this. That one I haven't smelled. I'm assuming it smells quite nice, but this is the one I fell in love with. Like
that one's better. I know that one's better.
You know, okay.
This is a little challenging to wear. It smells like the animalic muskiness has kind of become a little too synthetic for me, which doesn't make it as inviting to wear.
Yeah, yeah. That's the whole thing about Eau d'Hermès, is that there is this nuance to it. So it would make me kind of sad if it went away from that and became too synthetic and too obvious.
At least to me, you might not think that, but
no, I believe it. Oh God, this is in my top 5, Sebastian.
Really?
Like, this is like one of my top 5 favorites. Actually, a few of these that we're talking about are my top 5 of all-time fragrances.
Well, what is it about this you like? What Hermes? Is it the cumin?
It just it releases endorphins. It raises my serotonin. I think it's just the combination of those citrus notes with that backbone of leather and the cumin and whatever else is just creating that slightly dirty, animalic, kind of unwashed. I know some people are like, what the hell? That sounds so freaking gross. But just take my word for it. For those who haven't smelled it, until you've smelled it, you just don't know. It's like, it just smells sensual. I think it's a very sexy scent. I think that this is a scent that I would wear if I knew I was going to score. Like I would wear this. Like, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't, because the person would be wondering why I'm smelling it, but I don't know. Maybe I'd find the right match if I were looking to score. I don't need to look to score at this point in my life, but if I were.
Well, who's the perfumer behind this one? Do we know?
Edmund Rudnitska.
Oh, Rudnitska. Okay.
Rudnitska, yeah. And he had a theme throughout his compositions too, where he just like threw a little bit of something that just sort of like, you know, like a little animal magic. Like you think about like Dior Diorella, which is like one of the earliest ideas of using fruit, specifically melon. But then you have the lily of the valley and you have the other notes and everything. And you think at first, oh, okay, well, that sounds nice. And then, bam, you have that same sort of like, I don't know if it's caraway or cumin or coriander or something that just is like, this is a little naughty. This is a little like different as it dries down. And I just dig it. And then he also did Rocha
mustache.
A mustache as well.
EDT, yeah.
That. Think about it.
It does have the cumin, yeah.
He was a dirty old man. He was throwing these dirty things into his fragrances, but people loved them. They were all iconic. Rocha Femme, too. That same thing. It has that spice, a little bit of cumin, a little bit of caraway, a little bit of coriander, just a bite to it, a little dirtiness. They're all brilliant.
I grew up with cumin, and I absolutely love it. But there was a time I thought smelled of unwashed people or sweaty people that have not been washed. So you learn to kind of separate them.
Yeah.
Kind of.
But I think it takes a brilliant perfumer to say, you know what, if these certain smells have an association, well, I'm going to challenge that association by putting it into a composition and make it evocative to people. And I think that's testament to the success of all of them, and why they're all still in production today, including ARAMIS. They're just magical. So let's move on to this particular fragrance, Habit Rouge. Now that I have a long history with. That is one of my apps. That's in my top 5 as well, in fact. So while you don't really find the aforementioned animal kind of stuff in Habit Rouge, you definitely have something unique that was brought to the scene, if you'd agree, especially for men in the 60s.
So let me ask you this. Yours is like a vintage, because this is a current formulation. And from what I had read, they redid it in the early 2000s, right? They reformulated it.
Yeah. So this would be the reformulation, a more recent bottle, which is still incredible. And then this is one from the 90s. And the differences between the two are in fact subtle to the average nose. The older one definitely has a backbone that isn't here, but that's not to say this doesn't have a backbone at all. It's just this one is muskier and more resinous. It's almost like they put more like benzoin in it and more.
Oh, I love this.
Or benzoin, whatever way you want to pronounce it. But this one is just as beautiful. I think they did an excellent job with the more modern interpretation of it, and I'll wear the hell out of this one as well. So absolutely beautiful.
So, I had read also somewhere that this was the male alternative to Shalimar. Is this true?
It is rumored. I don't know if there is proof of this, but it would make 100% perfect sense. So Jean-Paul Guerlain did want to make the men's answer to Shalimar, and that's why you have a lot of crossover in what's in it. You know, it is centered around those resins, vanilla and leather and benzoin and the rose, but you have something different in this one, that it has that lift at the top. And I don't even talk about the EDP, because to me the EDP is a different composition altogether. Like, it's not, people say, should I get the EDP because it's stronger? And I'm like, no, it's not stronger. It's a different composition. They just called it eau de parfum. The EDT is where it's at, because that opening is the most beautiful rosewood and lemon, and everything is just I don't know. It's just sheer elation when I spray it. It's just brilliant.
So it's a top 5 for you.
Top 5? Hell yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to choose number 1, but if I had to, it would be a contender, because I have such an association for it. When I first smelled it, it was at this place. There is this tobacco shop in Harvard Square that also sells men's grooming products, including men's fragrances, and they have a number of Guerlain. And they had Habit Rouge, and I heard good things about it. I'm like, oh wow, like what an old-fashioned fragrance. I've heard great things about it being a classic, and I sprayed it, and I was immediately smitten, and I was like, this is it. I need to have it in my life, and I need to have it often. And that was about maybe 12 years ago. So long history with it.
50s, right?
1965. Yeah, and you think about it, like a scent that was marketed to men in 1965 that smells like this, it really like went in a totally different direction.
Yeah, that's really
didn't find rose or vanilla in any fragrances marketed to men until Habit Rouge. You'd see plenty of lavender, maybe a little tiny bit of vanilla, or tonka or kumarin or whatever, but not this. This really was a gateway to men having more of a palate for fragrance. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about a few more fragrances that we set aside.
Yeah, of course.
This
I think we're
discontinued
narrowing it down. So
Francesco Smalto.
yes, Francesco
So good.
Smalto, big one and a baby one.
Oh, I have the baby one.
The baby one, yes. Yay. This baby one has these little ribbed things on the cap, which rumor has it that means it's an older formulation, but I don't know. They both smell great. They don't. One doesn't smell any better or worse than the other. They're both wonderful. This big one too. Hopefully this will last me a long time. This, I think, is if they made Drakkar Noir much more sophisticated. Like, I think it's a much more sophisticated version of it. It just has the very naturalistic herbal quality to it. Like, I smell like sage and rosemary and all these like really wonderful green notes in the top. It's much more refined. And I'm not really knocking Drakkar Noir, but I have sort of like a mixed history with it because it was just everywhere when I was in high school. And
I wore 4 bottles of it in the 80s.
So did I. I mean, that, Cool Water, the whole 9 yards.
I get more metallic touches with this one. Is there juniper in this one?
Yeah, there is juniper. I'm just checking to see if I already used that one because it would be no good if I layered it onto something else.
It's good though. It's really good.
Yeah, yeah. This is really sort of it opens the senses. It's very bracing and refreshing.
And even though I sprayed the Francesco Smalto here, I'm smelling joint creeping up here. Joint ROCCOBAROCCO.
Oh my.
It's so good.
Oh wow. You know what I just did right now? I smelled the Francesco Smalto on the tester strip with the Eau d'Hermes, and it's really something. I don't know if I could layer the two of them, but it was definitely a unique experience. But yeah, this is a beautiful one too.
It was late 80s or early 90s with this
late
one?
80s. It was 1987.
Okay.
And the perfumer for this one, I wasn't able to find out who it was, so it's a mystery. Maybe it's out there somewhere, but I looked in a couple places, couldn't find it. But whoever that perfumer was, they sure created a knockout.
Well, it's interesting that my box would say spray.
You know what's funny is that the older one that I have is Vaporositeur, and the larger one is spray. I don't know if that means anything. Yeah, I guess maybe one was just imported, and the other one was just the domestic release.
So how about this one?
Yeah, I think that was exactly. I already have it in my hand, and I have 4 of them actually because that's how much I love this one.
Did you say you have 4 bottles of this?
Because I scored them really cheap. I have this large one. Unfortunately, the bottle sort of leaks. But there's this one.
Is yours matte finish? Or yours is transparent?
I have the earliest iteration here, which is the window. This
is not vintage, I don't think.
This is a window. So you turn around and you see that it's a... Yeah, that one's a more recent one. I haven't smelled it. People have told me that it isn't as good. I can't say either way. I just know that I was lucky to find these nice window ones. This one's a splash. I could always just decant it if I want to spray it. And then I have another baby, which is sort of the in-between. It was sort of like, you know what? We're going to kind of get rid of the window, but not quite. Like, they didn't really, I guess maybe they didn't have the budget to make these kinds of bottles anymore. I have no idea why. So they did this. And then eventually it was all matte. And this one's good too. Yeah, yeah. But I'm sure that one's good too. I mean, the whole thing about, it isn't as good as it used to be. It's
not like, yeah, it's lighter.
It's lighter. Have you smelled some of the older ones?
I don't remember, but I did in the past, but not recently. Yeah. So
yeah,
I was a huge fan of the brand itself, and he used to design for Dior.
Ah, that's right. Yeah. Another one where I don't know the perfumer either. I couldn't find out who it was, but
do we know the style and the notes for this? I'm definitely getting aromatics and spice.
Yeah, you see there's some similarities to the Gianfranco, not the Gianfranco, to the Smalto, but this is definitely a different kind of fragrance because it is more spiced than the other one. It's more like Carnation and I'm trying to think of it, anise. There are still the herbs in it. I smell geranium as it dries down. Tobacco. Yeah, I love it. I love it when it's just this sort of cornucopia of aromatic and floral things just swirling around.
Spices.
Yeah.
No, it's good actually. It's good. It just seems light.
Yeah, it could just be lighter. I mean, try to find one of the. I mean, one of these I got for maybe 45 or 50 bucks. If you're lucky, you just do a search on eBay, save it, comes up. You score, you get it before somebody else sees it. You know the drill.
Yeah.
How about Acteur? Yeah.
Acteur. Too. So my Acteur came with a whole pamphlet inside.
Well, actually, I had a smaller bottle too. Yeah, mine did too. My smaller bottle went. I had a smaller bottle as well, and they're actually two different formulations. This is a more recent formulation from the 2000s, I think. So now, if you notice,
look at my juice is so dark.
Yeah, because this is the newer formulation. The juice is lighter, and also look at the bottom. The difference in how I don't know if I can. So yours has the 90%, and mine doesn't.
Oh.
So this is the newer formulation is okay. Oh wait. Here it is. Been a long day at work. Here it is. Here's my baby one. And yeah, this is the older formulation, which the color is pretty similar to yours. The lighting kind of probably makes it a little bit different, but
you know what?
Good.
This one seems like it's turned,
and
the rose in here smells a little bit like wine.
Oh, interesting.
Rose wine.
But I kind of like that. I kind of like that it's so in fragrance chemistry, there's something called a damascone that's used in creating a rose note. And this is a very damascone heavy rose. Oh. And damascones almost do smell like port wine when they're very concentrated. Okay. So it could be that was the intention.
Did you say port wine?
Yeah, like a very
That's exactly what I'm getting actually.
Deep red wine. Like when you smell damascones, like there's damascenone, which is in the same family of scent molecules. When you smell that right out of the bottle, it smells like the strongest port wine.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
And it's used in like trace quantities to really build that rose note. But in here, maybe they did a deliberate overdose of it to create an effect.
Okay.
They, as in Maurice Morin, who also did Hermès Amazon, which is another rose fragrance. And interestingly enough, Bogart's signature. So I'm going to spray the newer version over here. This is the 2000s version that actually has like a website on it. Mm. My other one must be from like the early 90s, pre-internet.
Mine only has 2 ingredients.
Yeah.
Alcohol and fragrance.
Yeah, that's an older one. Look at my smaller bottle. Yeah, it's the same one for my smaller bottle too. Sorry for the
And then but... it's interesting they used his first name, Loris.
Yeah. That's what they used back in the day. And you don't see it in this newer box rather. And you see like all the ingredients.
Oh, ton of ingredients.
And you see the more modern Azzaro. No Loris, just Azzaro.
No Loris.
Yeah.
So they were producing that for a while then?
Until the late 2000s. So it's discontinued, I think, in 2007.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, the newer version, it's nice. It's sort of like a sedated version of it. Like, I'm sure I'll use it and enjoy it, but I'll probably like spray it a lot more just to kind of have it really stick to me. Or I could layer the two. Get the best of both worlds. That. Maybe because this aged a little bit, the top notes from this one will just sort of like make up for where they've left here. You know, it's interesting experimentation. So
yeah,
I like it. I like it a lot. It's interesting that you know, they released that, like it was sort of, you know, the timing was kind of weird because it was 1989, and I think that they were really just trying to do something unique, and it never really got that successful. I mean, a rose.
I'm surprised they kept it for almost 20 years.
Isn't that interesting? I don't know if they like discontinued it and then released it in the 2000s, but they had it in the 2000s again. And then they were like, yeah, forget it. It's not working this time either. Let's just discontinue it.
So we have one more here.
Last but not least, talk about out of step with time. This monolith. Wait, do you have Dom? I have Alm. I should get Dom. I have the Alm here. This is the most confusing thing, all right? So you have Alm. I have a solid black one, and you have the green one. So
wow,
what I can do is I can grab the right one. I have it.
Okay. Yeah. What's the difference?
So this is what's interesting is the one that you have, I think it was released in 1989, and this one was released in 2001. And it's a very close cousin to that one.
It's the same smell though, right?
It's not the same exact composition though. This was actually a different fragrance than what was released in 2001.
So is that still being sold?
I think it is. And that one, I don't think that one is. So I wasn't able to find the third one in this series amongst all of my fragrances, but I have these two here.
So you have one just like mine.
Yeah, there's this one. And then there's this one from 2001.
So the black one is more of an updated version of this one. Right.
But they're both really good. And I wouldn't even say so much this is updated or more modern. It was really an unusual release at the time because this 2001 Montana Alm, it has the Artemisia and the Geranium, and it's still like that very like spicy herbal or aromatic kind of thing. But it came out in 2001, and it's brilliant, confusing. But it's really confusing, yeah. And this bottle has Montana on the top. Does yours?
No.
No, this one doesn't. Yeah. And there's a third one, which is more of a citrus.
What does yours have on the bottom? Oh yeah, the one similar to mine is similar to mine. The other one is the sticker.
Yeah. Yeah, this one is just Montana Alm and really kind of difficult to read. Made in Italy. Yeah, this one was. Yeah, it's very interesting that there is, and I do have a third one, but I couldn't find it. And it's a citrus scent.
So, Montana fragrances are still sold.
These, I think that all Montana fragrances have been discontinued, but a lot of them are still readily available for. Not too expensive. Like you can get this one still maybe for like $25.
Ooh. Okay.
At least when I got it, I don't know if that's changed or, you know, it's getting harder to find, but yeah. Well, I could just spray the two of them and compare. I don't have any room for me to spray, but
strip time.
It was funny. I was prepared to discuss the Montana Alm, but not the Dome. It's too confusing. Like,
wait, it's called Dome? Did you say Dome?
D''HOMME. Yeah.
No, mine says Alm.
Yours says Alm? All right.
I'm confused.
That's even more confusing. Hold on a second. Because when I did, and you know what even makes it more difficult is like not only are the names so similar, they're all in similar bottles.
This one is from Paris, it says.
That one says it's from Paris, huh?
Well, when I bought this, it was from a fragrance shop in San Diego. Maybe he didn't really put it in the right box.
That's possible.
Because it was loose.
Let's see. So I'm just doing a little bit of research on the fly here. Okay. So this could be. All right, so there's a Montana Dome that was released in 1989. This is now it's clearing. I'm clearing it up now, Seth. Sorry about that. This is Montana Black Edition. Easy to remember. Go figure, I didn't remember. It's a black one. And then you have Montana Alm. And Montana Alm was released. Let me open up the info. That's the citrusy one. So Montana Alm is a citrus chypre, and that was released in 2001. So in 2001, both your release and this release entered the picture.
Interesting. And what about this one?
This turns out that now what's confusing too is the third bottle is such a similar color to this. Isn't this the weirdest?
Wait a minute, because the bottoms seemed. What's your serial number on the bottom? Batch
Mine says 30101.
47022.
Oh, yeah, Parfums Claude Montana. Now it makes me want to find the third bottle and really solve.
Same with mine.
Yeah, mine's eau de toilette. Everything is exactly the same except for a different number, different batch code, I guess. And then this one's the Montana
How could
Black.
my fragrance be different then? I think I do have the wrong box.
No, that is correct. That's Montana Alm. What neither of us have right now is the third one, which I'm missing, which is the Montana D''H''O.
Okay. All right. Got it.
So see how confusing it is? Because the names are similar, the bottles are similar. Montana Dom and Black Edition are similar. The one that you have, that I have here, Montana Alm, without the D'', is a very citrus chypre. It has, the citrus artemisia on top.
Geranium. That's fresh.
Very fresh. This is more spicy. And Montana Dom is very more in the direction of, say, a cross between Fair or Fere and say Havana. It's a very kind of herbal aromatic meets tobacco. And that's the third one that I can't find. And what's so silly is that when I grabbed this bottle, because the other bottle is such a similar shade, I thought I was grabbing Dom, but I actually grabbed this. Isn't that awful?
Glad we cleared that up.
Such is the follies of being a voracious perfume collector. Sometimes you just can't really keep track of everything that you have. But yeah, that one's a really great one too that you have, that I have here. They're
all great fragrances.
Yeah. But at some point, if the third one actually shows up, I'll let you know and I'll show it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So we've covered everything pretty much.
Well, that was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, that was really a great experience just going through all these wonderful fragrances.
Learned a lot about the history and some very scientific names of notes and ingredients that you mentioned that you've been studying for a long time.
Yeah, I'm grateful that a lot of that information has retained, and hopefully, when I get back into studying and blending, I now have a lot of inspirations at this point. I know not to recreate some things that are already in existence, and to try to be a little bit more innovative. Like having all this knowledge of fragrance is kind of a nice.
You can be a little inspired by some of these, couldn't you?
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. As long as it's not too reductive, not as long as I'm not making something that's a little too much like something that's already out there. Try to put my own twist or my own sort of signature on different kinds of ideas.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you speaking with me and going over these very classic fragrances, 15 of them. And guys, thanks so much for watching today's video, very long video about classic men's fragrances. Some still selling, some discontinued, but if any of them sounds great to you, go check them out, because we never know if these are going to be around 5 years from now. And some of them are discontinued and very, very expensive to find, if you can find them. Right. But either way, guys, appreciate you tuning in. Thanks so much for watching this video with Joseph, who is a classic men's fragrance lover. You can find him on Instagram. I'll have his Instagram in the info box.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have folks join.
Yeah. Did you enjoy this?
Oh, definitely. We should do this again. I mean, next time around, we can do things that are a little bit more on the modern side. I have that sort of versatility as far as discussing fragrance. So
cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for watching today. If you have any questions or comments, of course, you can put a comment down. Other than that, please like this video, please share it, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.